Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video for the week, and the topic for this week is going to be about the Magic Wand tool, and that's found up here at the top of our workspace. And when you first, open a new design workspace, notice that the Magic Wand tool is not brightly lit like some of the other tools are, and that's because anytime a tool is not brightly lit, it means you can't currently use it. And so the idea with the Magic Wand tool is it's really for tracing pixelated images. And when I say pixelated images, do you know what I mean? So I'm going to point out the libraries. We have 3 libraries over on the right-hand side here that are colored in yellow. The Custom Shapes library, the Backdrops library, and then the Artwork library. And so understanding the difference between a backdrop and an artwork is a good place to start. You see, if I open up the Backdrops library, I can browse through, a collection of nice little clip art type images like this. And if you find one that you want to work with, you can simply click on it and say open. And so notice on my screen that I have the picture, but yet there's nothing in the sequence view. And that's because this design is made up of pixels. In other words, it's made up of dots of color, and there's probably more than just black and yellow. There's all kinds of shades of black and yellow in there. And so we have a tool that can allow you to auto trace this. And I just want to point out before I do the auto trace with the Magic Wand, the difference between the backdrop and the artwork, because when I click on the artwork library, now the first thing that kind of is bothersome is that there's no icon view for the AI files, and so the only way to see what they are is to click on them, and it's like, here, I'll give you a tip. I use my arrows and I go left, 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 down, right, 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 or I guess that's the opposite. Left, left, down, right, 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 right. And so I can kind of view them, and every time I'm on one, of course, we can see a preview of it. So that is something that, but what I really wanted to do was maybe find the same little happy face, and so I'm just kind of flipping through because I didn't take note of which number it is. They do match. So what I'm telling you is the Backdrop library and the Custom Shape library are pretty much the same images, just that one of them is a vector version and one of them is a JPEG version. There's the little happy face. So let's open it up. Now notice when I opened up that art, from the art library, there are shapes. There's a yellow shape and there are several black shapes. And so that's what's missing, right? If you don't have artwork, and it's great if you do, when you have artwork, as you know, you simply can then select a color of it and then choose the style of embroidery at the bottom. So it's very easy to create embroidery from your artwork shapes. But if you don't have artwork, in other words, if you didn't have the AI file to begin with and you didn't have shapes and all you had was a picture that you might have found on the internet, right? You can go in and download images from your telephone or from your camera phone. If you take a picture, you could email it to yourself, and when you do, it'll be made of pixels. If you find clip art on the internet and you download it in JPEG or PNG or BMP format, they'll be made of pixels. So this is where the tool comes in handy, and notice now that there's a JPEG, and that's the backdrop of our screen. I should also point out the backdrop tool. So before we do that, here's the Magic Wand. We'll do that one in a moment. Once I opened with my backdrop library, this backdrop, it's part of the background. It's like you can't select it, you couldn't resize it or delete it or move it. But if you want to do those things, you click on the backdrop tool. When you click on the backdrop tool, you could move the location of that backdrop. You could change the size of that backdrop. And when you're done and you click on any other tool, it simply becomes part of the background again. And so the only way to interact with your backdrop is to click on the backdrop tool. And when the backdrop tool is turned on, there are several options. So as an example, I could right click on here and say to delete the backdrop or to load a new backdrop, or if I wanted to define the scale. So for example, if you knew that between one eye and the other eye was meant to be a certain size, you can click and drag and let go. And so from the outside of one eye to the outside of the other eye is currently 21.4 millimeters. That's because my ruler is set in millimeters at the moment. And if you're like, well, no, I meant for that to be 50, well, then you type in 50 and click OK, and it'll resize your design so that between here and there is the 2 inches that I just put, or the 50. So here, let's go back to inches. And so do it again, right click, define scale. If you wanted to just say, well, actually, I just want to make it a certain size, you don't have to do define scale. If you know the overall size, you can come up to the top and say, instead of a width of 4.8, you could say, no, actually, just want it 4 inches and say apply. So the right click and define scale is if you want to measure between 2 points and then set that size. We also have define horizon. So in that case, you click one, I did it wrong. Define horizon, it's click and drag to make your 2 points, not click, but click and drag. But if your artwork is not straight, you could straighten it. So if I was like, well, actually the face was meant to be facing this way, then I could rotate it a little bit. So just so you know, this is a backdrop. And there are no shapes that I could fill in with thread yet, and somebody needs to digitize it, or at least somebody needs to convert this image into shapes that we could then convert into embroidery. And so the Magic Wand tool is an awesome tool. It works the best when you have sort of relatively simple images like this. I don't mean simple happy face. I mean, if you give it a photograph of a poodle and it's all different shades of white, it's hard for this tool to work. But if it can easily see the colors, so click here, now it's made the yellow. Look, if I just hide, it's already created. I could click on this right now and fill it in with red. And so this is the idea with the auto trace ability of the Magic Wand tool is if you have, I converted that into embroidery and I hid the backdrop. So that's another tool I didn't show you. Once I converted it, I used this tool to hide it. Show, hide. Show, hide. So it's just on and off, basically. If I take that Magic Wand tool and I click on the black eye, it will only trace that one eye. And I could click on this eye, and then I could zoom in and click on the mouth, and I could click on the border. And so I would have created 2 very different pieces of artwork, because in one case I clicked on the black, and in the other cases I clicked on the yellow. And so notice that the black has, when I clicked on that border, it outlined both sides of it. And I can now select that border as its own little piece and decide that it's going to be an auto satin. And it'll put the stitches in, and I can select on these eyes and do auto satin for those ones. And maybe same thing with the mouth. So this is the idea that when you want to create embroidery and you don't have a vector image, there's no SVG artwork, there's no Adobe artwork or something, and you just have a JPEG and you bring it in, you may be able to use this Magic Wand. Now, the downfall of the Magic Wand is that it will trace very strictly. And so if you look really closely at these shapes, I mean, they're fine for what I've made, but let me just go, let's select this shape. Let's click on the artwork tool so that we can see that, actually those lines are a little bit wiggly. But if you remember the original backdrop, let's turn it back on. When we looked at the original backdrop, it was quite pixelated. And so the software has to decide how to trace along this line. And so there may not be a perfectly smooth line when you use let's put it this way, the cleaner your artwork and the more resolution, the cleaner these lines will be. That said, if you're just planning on taking it at this sort of size and filling it in with thread, I'm not sure that those little warbles would ever even be noticeable. And if they bother you and you don't like them, you can use the shape tool to click on the shape tool and come in and, for example, maybe I just select those 2 points and right click and ask it to smooth them out. There. And it could be as simple as that to kind of deal with any kind of a wiggly edge that comes. And like I said, again, the wiggly edge really is determined by how clean your artwork is, and sort of the nicer image that you have, the better the auto trace is able to function. And so I hope you guys enjoyed today's video about our Magic Wand tool. And until next week, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.